So Nishmita, you will start the introduction, right? Just wait for, yeah, maybe. Yeah. Wait for exactly 6:30. And
I see a lot of people are joining.
Yep. It takes about a couple of minutes, maybe by, 5 minutes from now, you'll pretty much have most of the people. Yeah. As it happens from today, it's a long weekend till about Tuesday. It's called the Festival of Deepavali, which is a festival of lights. It's one of those festivals where people go to meet others. They usually go back home wherever they are, if they are in different places. So from India, I expect today, Monday, Wednesday, there's going to be probably some drop in attendance because they would all be very, very busy with their, well, near and dear, as it were.
Okay, so shall we start?
Yeah, okay, please.
Hi, everyone. Good evening to everybody in India, and good day to everyone in the middle part of the world, and good morning to those in the US. A very warm welcome to our today's session of Coaching Across Boundaries. And I just wanted to remind you that towards the end of the session, please remember to go onto our forum, the link to which I'll post, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. So over to you, Ram, to introduce our speakers for today.
Yeah, if you could just, the slide share, if you could take out the slide share.
Yes,
thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, hi. So today, actually, we are almost at the end of 4 weeks. I think this is the 19th session. And yeah, Nishmita, if you can take off the slide.
Yeah, I'm just doing it.
Okay, thank you. So we have today Fons, supported by Carol as the anchor, dialogue partner. I heard Fons, how many years ago now? 5 years ago, 2014, at the European Mentoring Coaching Council conference at Venice. I was just telling him it was an amazing performance. He's a great showman. The webinar doesn't do justice to him. You have to see him on stage. His persona and the way he says that he does that to hide his content, which is not quite true. He's one of the acknowledged experts on cross-cultural issues as well as cross-cultural coaching. He has got his own model that he has developed, and he will be sharing that with us. And some of the stuff that he has done, surveys and all that, are pioneering work. And I quote that a lot in our webinars when we are trying to understand the differentiation between cultures and how people react differently coming from different cultures. I'm sure Fons will be taking this through the session. Carol and I, we again, both of us met at EMCC, and we initially started co-writing a book called Coaching Across Boundaries, I think. I don't remember exactly what it was. And then at some point in time, we were 3 of us, and it wasn't quite working in terms of how we could produce a book together with different perspectives and so on. So then we produced independent books. So both of us has written under the broader title of Coaching Across Boundaries. It was all edited by David Clutterbuck at that time. So you might be able to locate it in the EMCC library somewhere. So I just would like to introduce now, without adding any more stuff, to Fons and Carol for the next about an hour and a half. Thank you. Over to you, Fons.
Thank you, Ram. First of all, it's an honor to be here and wonderful to try to get into contact with all of you attending. Also, we will have wonderful little questions. Hopefully, we'll make it as interactive as possible. And it will be available later on for those who say, gee, what was he saying? So we'll get the slides and a recorded video, etc., etc. We even have an app that will make active during the session. Again, Ram, thank you. And I would like to give the word to Carol, who really is with Ram, not only writing a book, but really knowledgeable in this field. And she will guide us through the coming almost 1 hour and a half. Carol, please.
Hi, everyone, and I'm so glad to be here. And I'm watching the chat. That's one of my jobs today, is to watch the chat. And I see that you come from all over the world. I mean, we have Los Angeles, we have Santa Fe, we have Mexico, we have Mumbai, we have Bangalore, we have a lot of people from Greece, Romania, India, from all over. And I think it's so appropriate that so many people from so many different cultures are participating on this webinar. And I also had the honor to see Fons in Venice, where I also presented at the conference. And I enjoyed it so much, it's really stayed with me. And I'm sure all of you will get the most possible you can get out of this. Okay, and let me know if you have any questions. Any questions at all, just pop them in the chat. And I think we're good to get going.
Wonderful.
Over to you.
Let me get the slides. And so you are supported by slides. By the way, don't worry about the details. It will be run like a film behind. In the Netherlands, we would call that background music. And the voice will do the rest. See you later, perhaps in the middle of it, because I'm so afraid if my video is on too long, a lot of attendance will go down. And the slides are much more beautiful. Let me go with the slideshow. And now the title is obvious, Coaching Across Boundaries. And the subtitle is not unimportant. We have Coaching Dilemmas for Servant Leaders. And let me give you a bit of the background of this. A lot of people tend to say that the big problem of today is the pace of change. Everything goes so fast. Now, to be honest, I have heard that 40 years ago that the big problem was the pace of change. Because obviously it's a relative concept. If you're in a car, a bicycle does not look fast. But if you're a pedestrian, a bicycle looks fast. So it's a relative concept depending on the context. So if it's not the pace of change, what would be the big problem, challenge today? And I think it is twofold. First of all, we are getting more and more diverse in our experience. The diversity was there all the time, but in some countries they left the females at home and the men worked for a long time in the Netherlands. We had Americans in America, the French in France, and the Japanese in Japan. So we categorized the diversity in very neat boxes. Today, however, I'm living in Amsterdam, we see that the diversity is all over the map. We see males and females working. We see young and older people working. We see nationalities all over the map. If you take Amsterdam, and this is a quite recent development, 15 years ago, 7% of people living in Amsterdam didn't have Dutch parents, 7%. The percentage today is 53%. So in 15 years' time, you get an enormous amount of diversity just by nationality. I was in Miami not so long ago, and it had a sign, we speak English here. And they were lying. It was all Spanish. The point I'm trying to make, we have not only an enormous diversity of nationality, but also at the same time a mix of generation and a mix of gender and a mix of any other kind. So we have created a diversity of diversity, which is very complex to deal with. And let me tell you why. Because our models are still culturally biased, mostly written by white males, a bit over-aged, and they're telling the world how you should lead and telling the world what management is about and what have you. And I'm saying that because the cultural bias in our models don't help us to deal with diversity. So if you take leadership models, you have the leadership model very often written by Americans, and it is based on competencies. And how do you recognize an American book? That every 5 years they say the opposite. So 15 years ago it was vision, 10 years ago it was execution. 5 years ago it was courage, today it is caution. So they oscillate between one extreme and the other, and they realize nothing works. So they call it the revised edition. Then you go to a French book on leadership, and it's all about, are you male? Are you from Paris? And did you go to the École Polytechnique? And you say, oh, wow, yeah, that's typically a grand patron in France. Then you have the Chinese leadership literature, and it's all about yin, yang, mao, fao, tao. Now, we know this, because if we go to China, we read the Chinese book or a translation of it. If we go to America, we read an American book. And if we go to France, don't read anything. Now, that's fine. But the problem is now, you are living as a manager in Singapore or in Amsterdam or in Miami, and suddenly you realize your group, your team consists of a Chinese, a Nigerian, a people from India, a person from Sweden, and a Dutch guy. Now, what leadership model will you apply? Will you go top down or will you go bottom up? Will you go for vision or for execution, etc., etc.? And the problem is that cultural bias doesn't help us to deal with diversity. And what I would like to talk about is what is an alternative that ties together all these models in something beyond culture. And that's why we have introduced this idea of dilemma reconciliation, because multicultural teams, which becomes the new norm, is loaded with opposites, and we need to deal with those opposites. So that's one point. The second challenge is another hindrance in why we can't deal with diversity. And that is that our models are bipolar. Now, what do we mean with bipolar? If you score high on one, you score low on the other. So in politics, it's called, are you Republican or are you Democrat? And they don't listen to each other anymore. They just throw mud. And that is not only true in politics, it's true in Myers-Briggs. Are you thinking or are you feeling? Are you top down or are you bottom up? Are you centralized or are you decentralized? Even in cross-cultural work, we see that models are bipolar. I teach MBAs, and they are the icons of bipolar thinking. And let me give you an example. I ask MBAs, why would an organization centralize and why would an organization decentralize? And they jump on you with the answer and they give reasons why you centralize: economies of scale, control, consistency, and you decentralize for flexibility, close to the customer, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I say, okay, I'll ask you the question again, but I add a condition, namely, first think. And most MBAs get nervous because that's normally not part of their education, right? Now, may I ask you to think about, and I'll help you, what is the only reason for a company to centralize and the only reason for a company to decentralize? And the answer is very simple. The only reason for centralization is decentralization. Because if you're not decentralized, there's nothing to centralize. So one assumes the other. Now, this is not a word game. Let's take our human body. Our human body, is that centralized or decentralized? And the answer is yes. Now, the trick is that we have centralized certain activities in order to allow for more decentralization. Now, that's interesting. We centralize to allow for more decentralization. That needs another model of thinking, and that needs to be the new paradigm of coaching. As a coach, Are you helping the coachee to take the right decisions? Or would you take those decisions yourself? So are you in control or are you autonomous? Now, these dilemmas are part of the coaching role, but your leaders very often need coaching because they are loaded with dilemmas. And by the way, if leaders say, I don't have a dilemma, they're overpaid, because the essence of leadership, and we call that servant leadership, is to bring together opposites, like the meta dilemma, serving and leading. Now that's an explanation of what the coming hour plus will be about. Namely, what are the type of dilemmas and what can you do as a coach to help your leaders that you coach, and leaders on any level, in order to bring together those opposites, but also to distinguish a dilemma from a problem, because not everything is a dilemma. If we don't do this, we get a problem, and that is the problem of a great idea known as clients and partners that have not worked on reconciling the dilemma. So there are some futuristic pictures and some pictures of the recent past, right? These are the organizations that we have left with consultants that ask, you need to make a choice. While we say the only choice is between, is it a problem and a dilemma? And if it is a dilemma, the worst you can do is make a choice, because you're losing half of it. Now, is there an alternative? Yes, have a look. First of all, what Einstein said. Einstein said you can't solve a problem at the same level it was created. You need another type of consciousness. So you need to go one level higher. And to do so, we have 4 very popular entry points. Globalization, which are different viewpoints that are created. We have innovation, sustainability, and leadership. Now let me connect those 4 entry points in one sentence. Globalization leads to different viewpoints, or which is the essential role of a leader to bring together, which is another word for innovation. Innovation is bringing together opposing values that leads to sustainable results. That's your role as a coach, to guide that process. Now, have a look at our slide that summarizes creating wealth, or innovation, which leads to creating wealth, is to combine values that are not easily joined, therefore scarce, therefore profitable. And that is exactly what servant leaders do. Servant leaders bring together opposites. So if you say, yeah, but give me an example. Now, let's take Apple. What has Apple done that makes them an icon for innovation? They have brought together functionality with aesthetics, beauty. Everything that is beautiful on an
Fons, we can't hear you. Uh-oh. Hello.
I'm going to email him.
Okay, I'll try.
So,
So, Fons, would you like to mute your camera, if you would like to put off your camera in case your bandwidth is a problem?
Let me try.
Yeah.
That might be helpful, huh?
Okay.
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 So,
Thanks.
no problem. So if we take the Formula One, as a coach, I want you to think in dilemmas. What is the dilemma of the coachee, right? So let me take you to the Formula One, and you know the driving, the speed driving. What is the big dilemma of any race. It is the dilemma between speed and safety. Okay? So how can you combine the two? Any engineer in Formula One will say, how can I use the speed to make the car more safe? How can I use safety to speed up the car? And it's interesting, the answer to that is, for example, aerodynamics. You use the speed to make the car more safe. That's interesting. Now, let me go and apply that to cultural diversity. First of all, we have a method. First of all, I will give you a model that helps you to recognize, to give labels to the diversity. Then to respect both sides. And respect of both sides of diversity means it turns into a dilemma that you need to reconcile. And then finally, how can I, as a coach, realize and root this either in myself or at the level of the coachee or his or her organization? Now, you say, yeah, nice introduction, because let me summarize the introduction. The world is getting more diverse. Our models suck because they are either bipolar and or culturally biased. And that can't deal with diversity. So you say, what is the alternative? Think and work in dilemmas. Now we have developed a questionnaire that measures how good you are in the previous, what we call 4 R's. Recognition, respect, reconciliation, and realization. Have a look.
Fons, can I ask you?
Yeah, please.
Fons, can I ask you a question? I see it. Hi, I see it's coming up a little bit on the chat, and I'm also curious as to what your definition of a dilemma is.
Okay, we'll come back to that in more detail,
Okay.
but let me give you the quick and not dirty one. A dilemma comes from the Greek, and it means 2 propositions, literally. And because Greek obviously is a high context language, it's 2 propositions in conflict. And and we have added the word seemingly opposing. Why? Because a paradox is an irreconcilable dilemma in our definition. A dilemma, if you look at it differently, can be reconciled. But literally, a dilemma means that both are desirable, but if you go for one, you might lose the other. So for example, global versus local, nothing against global, and there is nothing against local. But if you have a bipolar model, people say you have to make a choice. Are we global or are we local? And we are saying no. The question should be, what can we do locally to make the company more global? And what can we do globally to serve the local customer better? Right? So by asking different questions, you suddenly get hope in a dilemma. Now, a dilemma can also be 2 negatives. And the awful Sophie's Choice, both in the book and in the film, where a mother has to make a choice between son or daughter to give to the Nazi. I mean, whatever you do, it's awful. It's the worst that can happen to a human being. And that is 2 negatives, but it's also a dilemma. We will, however, focus on 2 positives. I hope that answers the question for the moment.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. Now, we have done a little research because people say, yeah, these are nice words, but we have developed a questionnaire called the ICP, the Intercultural Competence Profile. And we have, by independent measures, amongst 8,000 leaders, looked at the correlation between the quality of 360 feedback and the questionnaire results on the 4 R's. And we have looked at bottom line business performance and the result of the questionnaire. So we have empirically showed that the competence to deal effectively with dilemmas leads to higher performance. And by the way, the correlations are so high that we have not found another competence that scores higher with performance and the quality of feedback than the reconciliation competence. And I'm saying that because everything we say, we try to empirically give evidence to. And this is one example. Now, what is then leadership if culturally biased leadership models don't work? What we have found is that great leaders, successful leaders, have the basic mindset, the propensity to help their organizations redefine problems as dilemmas, and it will lead to better business performance. And that's why I think the role of a coach needs to get rid of make a choice in a dilemma. No, help your coachee to frame the challenge as a dilemma, and then help the coachee in finding ways to reconcile it. Never do it yourself, because I believe a coach is a coach and needs to give a sounding board to the coachee in doing this more effectively. But the mindset of the coach needs to change as well. Now, let's give some example of coaching dilemmas. This is the result, Ram, I don't know if you remember, but in the preparation of the workshop at the EMC, so the European Coaching Foundation, if you like, these were the type of dilemmas that coaches raised themselves. Have a look. So these are examples, and I think sometimes it's the role of the coach, and sometimes it's what the coachees are dealing with. And we will give you in the coming hour some insights into how do you deal with these type of dilemmas yourself, but also in the role of a coach vis-a-vis the coachee. Now, let's start with the first R, and I won't take too much of your time because there are so many definitions of culture. I will give you my favorite one by Ed Schein at MIT, and I love the work of Ed Schein. Ed Schein has done a lot of research, and I remember when I was doing my PhD quite some years ago, to use the understatement, between 79 and 82. And there was a book by Kroeber and Kluckhohn. I forgot the title, but I never forget the subtitle, The 250 Definitions of Culture. Now, Ed Schein did a marvelous job to give the essence of those 250 models. First of all, he said there is explicit culture. Explicit culture is how culture manifests itself on the outside. It's the language we speak, it's the food we eat, it's the way we dress, it's the books we read. If you like, it's the behavior, it's the expression of a culture. But be careful, it hides a deeper level of norms and values, because the outer side, the explicit side of culture, are the artifacts and products. But if you eat a hamburger, the cultural question is, why would these people eat the hamburger? And that is the value of the hamburger. And some say it's quick and food that get me out of the restaurant as soon as possible. I remember in the beginning in Moscow, it was a sign of status because it came from America, etc., etc. A value is a shared orientation of what we define as what we should do, or what we desire to do. And a norm is a shared orientation of what we should do. When the value becomes the norm, Ed Schein said it so beautifully, it slips out of consciousness and becomes a basic assumption. And that is the core of culture. and you can't see it, you can't smell it, it's implicit. Now, to summarize this multi-layered model is that culture, the behaviors, the values, the norms, its expressions in behavior are the result of a dynamic process of human beings facing problems that come to us as dilemmas that we try to solve. And if it works, the value becomes the norm, and it happens in the area of human relationships, time, and nature. This adds to 7 dimensions of culture, 5 in the area of human relationships and time and nature. Now, culture, in other words, is very functional because it helps human beings to solve problems. Take a baby, a just born baby, it has a value called oxygen, but it needs to become a norm called breathing. And when the value has become a norm, in other words, when a healthy person breathes, it forgets about the oxygen. And that's why it has become a basic assumption. Now, let's do this 7 times. And these are, if you like, 7 frequently occurring dilemmas that you as a coach or you as a coachee will face. The first one is measured by a little app we developed. The app, don't worry, the app is for free, especially for the Dutch listeners, very important, it's for free. And take a couple of minutes to go to the App Store and have a look. There are QRs on the left-hand side, it's the App Store, on the right-hand side, Google Play, and download it. It takes a couple of minutes. Don't worry, you have lost nothing if you don't have a phone, because it's just fun for yourself. Because you can do a little questionnaire in the beginning. It takes 3 minutes to fill in, and it gives you a cultural profile, which you can compare to things that we will illuminate a bit later. So I'll leave you just for a second. I won't go to the video because you might need some time to download. And again, don't worry if you can't do it, because, by the way, otherwise you can Google it or in the App Store, Culture for Business, and it will show up, and download it in that way. It's for free. So check one country. If you want more, it's an in-app purchase, but we don't need it for today. We only need your profile, which is again a free profile, and you can compare it to any country you like. And Carol, if there are in the meantime some questions that came in, I'm very willing, obviously, to respond to them. And if not, then we'll just wait a couple of minutes to continue.
There is a question here that really struck out to me. How to treat different mentalities during a session is one of the questions from different cultures. Hans? I think everyone's busy downloading the app right now. Fons, did you hear the question?
Yeah. Hello.
Hi, did you hear my question?
No, I didn't. I was kicked out. I don't know what happened. Go ahead, Carol.
Okay, one of the questions was how to treat different mentalities. I assume that's cultural mentalities during a session.
Okay. It's obviously a very broad question. You know, if you take a multicultural audience, like this webinar, every aspect of a presentation is seen differently by different cultures. So if we take, for example, learning styles, what I've noticed is that in many parts of America, in particular in California, people like to start with practice and then link it to a model. In France, it's the opposite. You start with a model and then you check the practice. So that is just about learning styles. But take another element for example, group coaching, is that in some cultures, to ask for people to participate as an individual is much easier, like in the Western world, than, for example, in Asia. While if you give people the time in their own group to discuss it in groups, now you might say, yeah, no, okay, in Asia you do this, and in America you do that, and in France you do that. What do you do? And that's very often where we focus on. What do we do in multicultural environments? And I would say try to draw for yourself a circle so that every aspect comes back. And then in my experience, it doesn't really matter where you start. So my answer to the question, because it's a very generic question, is look at the aspects of the different cultures that you're facing, draw a circle rather than a line, and in the circle say, now, it doesn't matter where we start as long as you cover all the boxes on the circle. So combine the model with the case, and to be honest, it doesn't really matter if it is the case that you start with or the model, as long as you keep on going on the circle. That's one. And what I do, in every dimension, I do the opposite. So sometimes I start with the model and then give people a case. And sometimes I start with the case and then give people a model.
All right, and is there any preference from your experience, whether to start with the case or start with the model, or is that cultural?
No, now obviously if it's a monocultural group, in California, I would start with a case and then go to the model, and in France, I would start with the model and then go to a case. But in your field, Carol, you very often get, like this webinar, a multicultural team, and what I then advise is swap. Sometimes start with the model and then go to the case. Now in 7 dimensions, that's easy. And even the questionnaire, like the next slide you will see, I will go into a case and then I'll explain the model. In the next one, I'll go to the model and then to a case. So alternate. And then if you're on a flow, people say, oh, that's interesting. And in fact, I think multicultural environments are in that sense much easier as long as you alternate the approach.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. Yes. Another comment that was here from quite a few people was also about cultures within cultures.
Yes.
Right? Because we can say someone from India, but in India there are hundreds of cultures.
Oh yeah, almost as many as their languages. It's amazing.
Exactly.
But who am I with Ram here to say that? But that's true in Europe. That's true even in the Netherlands. We have the northern part, the southern part, and then we have males and females, and we have young and old. Now, my advice, first of all, don't be blind to it. There are subcultures, right?
Yes.
That's one point. So don't be blind for it. The other point is, start with the issue, don't start with culture. In other words, if there is an issue between a young American female talking to an old Ghanese male, to be honest, I don't care what it's caused by. But give me the issue. What is the issue? And then from there you could say, hey, it's a male versus a female, or perhaps it's more the American and Nigerian issue, or it's the combination of all that. So what we have seen in my 40 years of experience, we very often started with culture, and then we gradually went into the world of issues. So now we start with issues, and then we link it to culture. And that also helps you to cover the subcultures, rather than to say, oh, this is a Nigerian American problem, whilst perhaps it's a male-female issue, or it's a young-old issue. Fair enough.
All right, there's another comment that just came in now, Fons, that apart from language, it's not easy to experience the values of the individual coachees.
True, and there are more problems around that. But I would just say, capture some strength of yourself. Be aware of where your strengths and limitations are on the competence level, and know your own value set. And I hope the little app has helped you in order to get a first picture of your value set. And Carol, in view of time, I would like to go on with giving some examples so that the questions get more context. Is that okay?
That sounds great.
Yeah? So I'll give you an example of a little case. Now, some of you that know my work know this question very well. It's the beginning of the first dimension. So I've asked this question to 140,000 people, and the answer will be given later on, and the questions coming with it. But the question is as follows. You're riding in a car driven by a close friend of yours. Your friend is speeding, going 50 kilometers or 50 miles, depending on your system, where you're allowed to go 30, and your friend hits a pedestrian. You come to court, and the lawyer of your friend says, don't worry, you're the only witness. Two questions. First, what is the right of your friend to expect you to testify to the lower figure? In other words, to lie for your friend. My friend has a definite right. My friend has some right. My friend has no right. And I would invite you to poll. You see on the next one, is it A, is it B, or is it C? And you will give an instruction how to poll.
Nishmita?
All right, I've launched the poll.
Thank you.
Fons, please let me know when I'll have to end it.
Please, and I will give you a little notice.
Sure.
Thank you for the help.
Pleasure.
Yeah, you could stop now because it's a simple question and thinking doesn't help.
All right, great.
Okay.
Shall I share the results?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay. I can stop sharing the results when you let me know.
Okay.
All right. Hello. Ram, you're on mute.
Yeah. Yeah, Fons, it is 50-50 out of
Okay.
38 people. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Now that's interesting. First of all, I very often ask the question, and think about it yourself, who would like to be in this situation? And in my workshops, I've never had a participant who said, this is a nice situation. Why? Because for most people, if not all, this is a dilemma. Why? Because there's nobody amongst the listeners, correct me if I'm wrong, that doesn't want to help friends. But at the same time, there's nobody amongst the listeners that has something with the truth. And that's the dilemma. Now, it's interesting, the dilemma is human. It doesn't matter what passport you have, if you're male or female, if you're young or old, this is a dilemma. And when I then ask the question, what would you choose, which is kind of unfair, culture creeps in. So I know that when you have a multicultural team, it's very often around 50-50, predominantly B or C. There are very few A's, but there is a second question is, would you lie, yes or no? Where it's really more tough. Now, companies say, yeah, we see that. In America, there is a tendency to say C, and the same in Northern Europe. In India, it's more B. In Korea, it's more A. We know that. Now, what do you do if you say as a company, we want to have one company and we want to have one set of values and we want to have the same type of behavior? So companies have invented values. And I was with a large financial institution in America. Obviously, their first value was integrity. And I say, and this is a one-liner you have to keep in mind, the value of a value is, does it help you to reconcile your dilemma? So I said, how does the value of integrity help you to give the correct answer to the car accident dilemma? And there was an American who stood up, this was a multicultural group, and he said, Mr. Trompenaars, I lost you. How can you have integrity if you lie? And a good friend of me would not ask me to lie. There was a Korean in the room who stood up and said, John, I disagree. How can you have integrity not helping your friend? Everybody in the room understood both. Because if this is a dilemma, you understand both. It's your culture that gives preference of helping friends by lying versus telling the truth. Now, why I chose this company is they had a second value, and that was we respect the culture of others. So I would invite you to answer the following question. In the context of these values, what would your answer be in the car accident dilemma? Now, it's easy if you are amongst Americans in America and yourself have an American passport. It's easy when you're amongst Koreans. But now you are in a multicultural team, knowing that some would say integrity is lying, helping friends, and others would say integrity is to tell the truth. And you respect both viewpoints. What would you do if you are an international company that want to live your values? Now, take a minute to think about that. What you would do in a multicultural team if these are your values that your company stimulates you to use. Now, I can tell you that I have used this questionnaire in a workshop, and I've done this about 1,000 times and asked the table what I asked you. So if you don't come up with an easy answer, and I don't know, Carol, if people have typed in some answers, but my experience tells me It's a very tough question. And it's not a question where you show a lack of intelligence or experience.
Shall I share the results?
So, Carol, I don't know, were there people with a solution in a multicultural team, what you should do if your values are integrity and the respect of other cultures, in view of the car accident dilemma?
It's interesting as you look at the results of the poll, where 6%,
Yes.
they have a definite right. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. It is, and you very often see an enormous amount now of variance, especially in a multicultural team. But now, what would you then do if some define integrity as helping friends and others define integrity as telling the truth? And you respect those viewpoints, right? Now, let me give you two comments.
Okay.
First of all, my question is unfair. Why? Because my question assumes that by making a choice, you get more or less integrity. You don't. If you go to the etymological dictionary, integrity is always about wholeness, something whole. And the best definition I've seen is integrity is creating wholeness through the integration of opposites. And this question doesn't allow that. Now, I've been in Japan often, and in Japan they very often come closest. They say, Mr. Trompenaars, our option is not on the list. What we would do in Japan is we would convince our friend, as a friend, to tell the truth in court, him or herself. So we can talk to the judge to lower the sentence for his courage. Wow. So instead of choosing between the friend and the truth, you connect the friend to the truth. And that gives an idea of integrity. By the way, the alternative in the Western part of the world is no, you don't lie, but you visit your friend frequently in jail. Yeah. And that is something that makes people sometimes laugh, but it's not far from the truth if you see how people behave. So some cultures start with the friend to get the truth, and others start with the truth to deepen the friendship. Now let's look the starting point of a dilemma, how that is measured by this questionnaire. This is called universalism versus particularism. And have a look at the definition of universalism. It's about consistency, systems and standards, procedures you follow, transparency or demanding clarity, letter of the law.
Fons, would you like to share the screen, please?
Oh, is it out, the screen?
Oh, yeah, the screen is out. Yeah, if you could share the screen.
I'll do it again. I'm sorry for that. I'll go back to the sharing. Here we go. So, universalism, is it showing, Ra?
Yeah, it's clear now. It's a full slide. Yeah, we'll be sharing we'll be sharing it in the forum anyway, not to worry, but.
Good. So the universalistic culture that would say my friend has no right and I will not help by lying, they believe in consistency, rules, systems, uniform procedures. They talk about transparency and the letter of the law. The particularist that would rather help their friend, say be flexible, be pragmatic. It depends on what happened to the pedestrian. And the best question I ever had was an Italian asking, what happened to the car? Because my answer will depend. They are very often at ease with ambiguity, and it's the spirit of the law. Now, may I ask you, if you are leading international groups, a multicultural environment, what is better, the left or the right? Now, great leaders, we call them servant leaders, will say, we need consistency in order to be flexible. We need exceptions to increase the quality of the rule, like an error, the error correcting system, etc., etc. So it's the combination of both, where your culture decides, do you go from flexibility to consistency, or vice versa? Have a look. This is our 140,000 database, where this shows the percentage per country, and you can have many more countries on the app, where you say, my friend has no right or some right, and I will not help by lying. So it's a degree of universalism. So you see that the Swiss score highest. You see most Protestants from Germany to Switzerland are more at the high end. They would tell the truth. And at the bottom, you see Venezuela, Korea, India, China, Russia, that would rather go for a friend. Now, is one better than the other? Obviously not, because they're both half-truth. The risk, if I would stop here, is that the people at the top would say, thank you, Mr. Trompenaars. I knew the Venezuelans and Koreans are corrupt. You can't trust them. They always help their friends. Till I did a workshop in Korea, and a Korean told me, Mr. Trompenaars, I knew the Americans and Canadians are corrupt. And you proved it. To say why? You can't trust them. They won't even help their friends. So it is a matter of how you define it. What we need to do is to combine. Have a look. This was the EMCC score in Europe. Very high on the coaches in universalism. Now, that doesn't matter because this does not measure how you reconcile. This is, if you like, the preference or where you're coming from. Now, there is a dilemma in business, very often quoted, related to this dimension. Do you need to go local or rather global? So the dilemma, global standards you need versus the particular case of cultural diversity. We say crack the line. If you overdo the global and centralized, you get the global corporation. The headquarters in Detroit, the rest of the world is called ROW, and you do what we say in headquarters. Then you go to the multi-local corporation. It's the corporation that is operational in many countries, and formerly the Big Four, the accountancy firms, where they were very often only sharing one thing, and that is the logo. That is called the multi-local corporation. Then be careful for the compromise. It's the international corporation, the Statue of Liberty, with slight adaptations called the local flag. What we gradually need to become is the transcultural corporation, and that is a reconciliation. Let me give you 4 characteristics. 1, it is a value-driven organization, so they share values worldwide, and very often these values in the modern organization are values like yin and yang. So instead of saying we believe in collaboration, they say we strive for teams that consist of creative individuals. We give people direct feedback with diplomacy. Okay? So that is one characteristic. The other characteristic, very often, it's a polycentric organization. In other words, it doesn't have one center, the big HQ. No, it has centers of excellence. Some things are done in India, in Bangalore. Good example, by the way. The head of IT should be there. Marketing and sales, perhaps, is best done in Japan. And the head of digitalization could be in California. So in one culture, you get, and in one company, you get different centers of excellence. Third characteristic, there is a keen attitude to learn locally, combine the best local practices into next practices, which you then globalize. And finally, it is an organization where you have servant leadership, namely leaders that enable others to perform better as the main leadership model. That are all processes that combines local with global. Now, I would like to ask Carol if we have on this level perhaps some questions, because I would like to summarize where we are now, because the next 6 dilemmas are going much quicker. But I've given in the introduction that we are getting more diverse in our workforces. That means as coaches, we need to learn models that are going beyond culturally biased models and beyond the bipolarity of most of our models by asking the question, how can value X give you more of value Y? So how can universalism help you to get more particular? As an example is the global firm versus the local oriented firm. And the question is, how can what we learn locally help us to become more global and vice versa? That's my summary of the first part, but I think it's time to look at some of the questions that might have evolved.
Okay, this is fascinating. I find this totally fascinating. I'm watching the questions and trying to listen to you at the same time because I don't want to miss a minute of it. Okay, here's one question that just came up. Is the response to VUCA in the 4 that you listed in globalization, sustainability, etc.?
Yeah. So the question exactly is what, Carol? Sorry, I didn't get the question.
Well, I'm going to read what was written here. Is the response to VUCA in one of the 4 that you listed? You listed globalization,
Yes,
sustainability,
yes.
etc.
Is there a preference or?
Yeah, I think that's the question.
Okay. Now, I would really start by centralizing, if you are a global company, or rather a transcultural corporation, I would start with eliciting the business dilemmas you're facing, and then ask as many people as you can, which values and behaviors do we need to reconcile our global business dilemma? And then from the dilemmas, I would go to the values. So I would start with point number 1, centralize the values, but start with the functionality of the values to solve your business dilemma. So in an international firm, I would first gather the challenges, reformulate them as dilemmas, and then find the values and behaviors you need globally to reconcile those shared challenges called dilemmas.
Thank you. That's amazing. Okay, there's another question here. Someone wants to know would like to know if universalism, I'm sorry, excuse me. How is global versus local model? Is that still current? Are people still using that?
Yes, they do. It's a good question because, to be honest, I think now there is much more attention to corporate culture. Now that would be another webinar, Ram, and I'm very willing to do. But I agree that the global-local dilemma is used less, but it's still dominant because there are still many firms going international, but perhaps more digitally. What I see gradually getting into the foreground is more the managing change of corporate culture rather than in the background, because even reconciling the dilemma of global versus local needs a organizational culture change, because people need a mindset that is quite different, and which I would rather call corporate culture or organizational culture than just global versus local. So I don't know if that was a leading question, but I would agree. Also take corporate culture more seriously than ever.
Okay, thank you. There's one more question here, and I'm trying to understand what the question is. Someone asked if there are any tips on the questions we could raise in the coaching session to integrate the opposite?
That is a wonderful question, and it's you know, we do a license training, and in the license training, one of the key learnings of a licensee, and they're not only coaches, they're trainers, they're consultants, is never ask people what is your dilemma, because if there is no context, they get afraid or they get macho. I don't have dilemmas, I'm a real man, you know, which is kind of a stupid answer. First of all, to be macho is kind of interesting anyway. But Carol, coming back to the question, ask people what keeps you awake at night? What is your major challenge? And then go to, oh, right, and then you give the opposite yourself as a coach, rather than asking, what is your dilemma? So if you think dilemmas yourself as a coach, you can ask a lot of questions that avoids the word dilemma, and you check at the end, oh, you mean on the one hand, on the other hand, and also make sure that both ends, on the one hand and on the other hand, are positives. So don't say, oh, you're telling me on the one hand you want to be innovative, and on the other hand there is no budget. That's not a dilemma, because one is positive and the other is negative. No, say, oh, you want to be innovative, and why, blah, 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 blah. And they say, oh, because I want to reduce cost. Now, reduce cost is positive. Innovation is positive. And then you check, oh, so you say that at the same time you want to become innovative and you want to reduce cost. Oh, that's a challenge, but you know it's a dilemma, okay? So yeah, that would be my answer.
Thank you very much. There's one more question here. If
yeah,
we have time, do we have time, Fons?
Yes, we do.
Okay, it's about the app. And the question is, how does the app reconcile the multi-diversity of the South African population?
Yeah, it doesn't.
It's a great question.
The app, by the way, we're working on one that does, but the app for the moment is just giving insight in the first two R's, recognition and respect. It doesn't go into reconciliation and realization. Yeah, that's why I think it's a great question, because indeed it still needs the coach to do so. Yeah, because the app is based on monoculture. You go and it has an in-app to gender and generation, so it's almost a diversity app. But it rather gives you insights in the different cultures you have. But for example, we have a multicultural team app that, and I'll give it to Ram as a handout, where the app gives you insights into the dilemmas of a multicultural team and ways how to reconcile those dilemmas. But it's not in this app. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. That's amazing.
Good. Hey, let us go, in view of the time we have, into the next 6 meta dilemmas. And this one is called individual versus communitarian. And that is the most used cultural dimension. Are you rather writing I with a capital letter and you with a small y, or vice versa? That's one way of recognizing it. Or do you start with the first name or the last name? The family name, very often the first mentioned in Asia, is because it's about the family. Oh, then you say the first name, call me by the family name. While in individualistic cultures, very often it's the opposite. I'm Peter Johnson, call me Peter, right? Now, we have developed a questionnaire with A or B, and it's about the issue of how do we reward people? Is it rather an individual or the team? Have a look. We have the question, how can one improve the quality of one's life? A, give people as much freedom as possible, then the quality of one's life will improve as a result. Versus B, no, you have to continuously take care of your fellows, even if it obstructs individual freedom. And you see the measurement is clearly, if it's rather A, it's individualistic, and B is communitarian. Now, in our larger questionnaire, we have more of those, but in the app, you have a slider where you can choose a position between the two. But if we take the extremes and the average of a country, have a look. And there are some surprising scores. Like Israel scores highest on individual versus collective on the individual side. There is a famous joke in Israel: if there are two Israelis in a room, there are at least 3 opinions, right? Israel is very individualistic, but what this doesn't measure
Very
is
true.
how good they are in giving the individual perspective a group sense, because I think Israelis are the best ones in reconciling individual freedom with groupthink, and that's not always what the media shows. Canada, USA is more obvious individualistic, but again, it doesn't show how good a nation, a group is in reconciling it with the opposite. Then we have Egypt, Mexico, India, Japan, much more communitarian. Now, I would like to leave you with a little case. By the way, the EMCC scores. Have a look at age. Have a look. The same database, 140,000 people, where you see an enormous diversity, as big as nations, but amongst generations. So it's showing the diversity of diversity. The case is the following. There is a group, a joint venture of a group of Japanese with a group of Northwestern Europeans and Americans. This was my last job in Shell, where the project leader said, Fons, the Japanese seem to be demotivated. So we interviewed them. And they said, yeah, everything here, it was done in Belgium, by the way, everything is focused on individuals, individual bonuses, individual everything. And we Japanese feel jeopardized in our team spirit. Have a look at the dilemma. Do we go for individual performance or rather for team cooperation? Now, what we do with dilemmas is we crack the line. We call it cracking the line. Here we are. And you exaggerate the extremes. If you only go for individual motivation, the risk is me, myself, and withholding information. There is no reason why I should share information because it might be at the cost of my bonus. Ask the Japanese what the limitations of team bonuses is. It leads to mediocrity. Again, be careful for the compromise. Go for the small team. What we need to do is have a look at this. And my question to you, what could you do to achieve this? Namely, at the same time reward teams for what they do for individual creativity and reward individuals for teamwork. Wow. Now, I'm saying this because there is a whole book written about this called Co-opetition. How do you measure this? Now, what we did in Shell, we had 50% of the variable pay will go to individuals on only one criterion. Who's the best team player as an individual? And we had teams to present what did they do to nurture individual creativity. In both cases, either the team or the individual was giving 100 points that they could allocate to either a team who showed what they did for getting individual creativity up, and you could give it to individuals on the criterion who's the best team player. It worked fantastically because you motivate individuals to become better team players, and at the same time you motivate teams to do something about individual creativity. By the way, the book is called Co-opetition. You individually compete to better cooperate. You cooperate to have individuals better compete. And that works beyond culture. It shows in multicultural environments that both groups try to cross the line, but the starting point is different. The Japanese start with the team and worry about the individual. And in America, they worry about the individual, how to become a better team player, right? Now that is the second big dilemma, that you as a coach could inspire you to say, wow, how can we do this? And I'll come to coaching dilemmas in a second. There is a third dimension. If there are not questions, I've put this in. Would you like to, Carol, see if there are questions popping up?
I know one asked for the name of the book. We can put that, Ram, you'll put that on the summary? The name of the book?
Oh, that's the co-opetition. So CO dash opetition, the co-opetition. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Okay. And we might run also add a series of recommended readings or some articles that are easily to chew. I could send them
Please,
later on to you.
Yeah, I've already said that once you send it to me, we'll post it all in the forum. Yeah, thank you.
Very good. Let's go to two of my favorite dimensions. One is very easy, quick, but never dirty. Is why do we say that some people are neurotics and others are like robots? It's because there are value judgments about what do we do with emotions. There are neutral cultures that have emotions but don't show them, and affective cultures that have emotions and do show them. Stereotype, Southern English people are more neutral, stiff upper lip. People from the Middle East show emotions. Have a look. How do we measure that? It's called Myers-Briggs. They look at thinking and feeling, for example. Thinking is more neutral, feeling is more affective, but what Myers-Briggs in MBTI doesn't do is crack the line. Have a look. If your emotions and head is in control all the time, the epithets, the extreme is analysis paralysis. If your heart is in passion, you're the loving neurotic if there is no control. So what is the reconciliation? And we call it continuously check what your heart communicates. In other words, if you are more neutral, put a little video in your presentation. You know, I am pretty passionate and I show it. You can't see the video, but I'm waving my hands all the time. What I do is show you some bar charts very soon because it gives control. So in an international environment and also as a coach, look at who are you? Are you more the emotional, passionate guy or girl? Or are you rather more controlled? And try to counterbalance it with the other side. Because a great coach combines. They continuously check what your heart communicates. Now my favorite, and it's about appraising, rapport or rapport, and I love this one, and the label is a bit enigmatic. What the hell, Fons, do you mean with specific and diffuse? Let me explain this, my favorite dimension, because it's most hidden. Specific cultures are analytic. They are, get to the point. Diffuse cultures are more holistic. Give me the full system. The model was developed, this dimension, at least empirically, by a famous psychologist, Kurt Lewin. He came from Germany. He was born in Poland, by the way, in Krakow. Became German. And then in the 30s, he went to America and became world famous as a psychologist, Kurt Lewin. And in his trip from Germany to America, he described his culture shock. He says, how come that Americans, if you hardly know them, talk so easily to you? He says, because Americans are like peaches and we Germans are like coconuts. Let me explain. A peach, the American model, has a lot of flesh that is public, but a tough nut in the center that is private. In Germany, the coconut is tough on the outside because the privacy is so big. So let me first describe what he called the U type, the USA type. It is a model where there is a lot of public flesh shown in the refrigerator. It's public in America. You hardly know people, they're in your refrigerator. While for other cultures, like the Germans, it's close to a rape. I mean, what the hell are you doing in my refrigerator? It is very private. And same for the car. I noticed when I studied in the US, you need my car, take my car. Have you tried that in Germany? Take my Mercedes? No way. Okay, take my wife, but leave my Mercedes, very private. Now, we have furniture. In America, they move, they leave their furniture. Have you tried this in France? It's called antique. You take it with you. It has a whole story, generations back, you know. So what some cultures, like Americans, define as public, is seen by other cultures, like the Germans, as very private. Now, the swap from the American to the German model is best introduced by how do people use titles. When I got my PhD at Wharton in Philadelphia, it was quite interesting because suddenly they called me Dr. Trompenaars. And I said, gee, it looks like Germany here. No, it was quite interesting because in Germany, you are not doctor only in the university like in America, because in America you have a barbecue party with the same people and they call you Fons. In the university, it's doctor. While in Germany, you're hair doctor everywhere. You're hair doctor in academia, at work. You buy a steak at the butcher, good Abend, hair doctor. You come home, good Abend, Frau doctor. Where are the little doctors? Everything is doctor. That's interesting. While in Germany, doctor is you. In America, doctor is a title. Why? Have a look at when two speeches, U types, you are having a specific relationship. You're doctor in the university, but you're Fons at the barbecue. In Germany, you're a hair doctor everywhere. Why? Because the privacy is so big and you, in the privacy, are a hair doctor. If you don't know people, they call you Sie and not Du. But when they know you, and that takes 3 years in Germany, you go all the way. And this happens in October in Munich. Now, the big problem between cultures is when the peach meets the coconut. In other words, what is defined in some cultures as public is private in another culture. Now, let's take the idea of loss of faith. In Asia, loss of faith is making public what is perceived as something private. Okay? The point of the arrow for some is public. Let's discuss this in the meeting. While in diffuse cultures, if it is an issue, discuss it before the meeting or after the meeting. Now, we have measured this by asking, would you paint the house of the boss if you don't feel like doing it? Answer A, you don't have to pay the house of the boss because he's the boss in the company, not outside. Vice versa, you could say, yeah, it's my boss, I need to paint. You see that the assumption in this question is that answer A is a specific relationship, like the title. You're the boss in the company, not outside, so I won't paint. In a diffuse culture, yeah, it's my boss, I need to paint. Have a look. So you see that in Sweden and Netherlands, 91% would not paint the house. It's a specific culture. In China, Nigeria, Kuwait, and never look at the absolute scores, but it's much more a tendency to paint the house of the boss. It's my boss everywhere. Now, I like surprising scores. Let's take Japan. 71% of the Japanese said, we will not paint the house of the boss. And I interviewed the Japanese. You know what they said? Our option is not on your list. In Japan, we would never wait till the boss asks. We would offer. So you see, with cross-cultural research, you have to be very careful how you phrase the question. That's why we're asking more questions. Now, this was the score at EMCC, 93%, one of the highest scores I've ever seen, and there were at least 80 people who filled it in, would not paint the house of the boss. So coaches, where are you? It's perhaps also showing this type of dilemma that coaches have. We need to provide qualitative benefits for the individual. We need to provide value to the organization, specific and diffuse. We need to connect closely with our coachees. We need to keep a professional distance. You see the difference? On the left-hand side at the bottom, diffuse. On the right-hand side, specific. Have a look at this dilemma. Do we support and accept the coachee? Or do we give credible criticism? Have a look at the dilemma. This is typically the coach-coachee dilemma. Support and acceptance, diffusely, credible criticism. Now, look at the boomerang, the frisbee. Only if the client feels your support and acceptance are you free to offer credible criticism. So criticism is given as a combination of specific and diffuse. And Deborah Tannen calls that the reconciliation between rapport and rapport. My advice is create rapport of unconditional respect and love within which you give tough criticism, like good parents do. In view of time, I would like to do 2 more dimensions and then summarize. Do we give status based on what you do or who you are? And this is a big dimensional dilemma that we see in what gives people authority. And what you do is output culture. In America, you're judged on your output. In Asia, you're judged on where you're coming from, your age, your gender, your formal education. In leadership, that's very important. It's bottom up and top down. If you go bottom up, the risk is a book that recently came out, Too Much Democracy. It's the subtitle of the book is The Swedish and Dutch Disease. On the other hand, you have top down. In the Middle East, the risk, follow the leader with no feedback. Okay? What is the reconciliation? And I love this model by Greenleaf, the servant leader. The servant leader is the person that holds the ladder for others to climb. And it combines bottom up and top down. It is the good father and the good mother. Okay? It is where the two are combined, where sometimes you're bottom up and sometimes you're top down. You listen to your children and then you take a decision, but it's based on listening. Have a look at this picture. A servant leader is not a weak person. It's a person that can be very tough, but always in the context of conditional love. Okay? And it's a model that works in every culture, namely enabling others to perform better. The last one is about time, and I think it's very relevant. We ask people to draw 3 circles, representing past, present, and future. And we look at 2 aspects. Are you more future or past-oriented or present-oriented? And do you organize time sequentially, where you recognize people, Fons, you have to stop at 3:30 sharp? Or are you more synchronic, where you do things in parallel, like Latin cultures, where 1:45 might become 2 and 3 might become 3:15? By the way, I'm not giving a hint for being late. So what is the reconciliation? Is the best way to speed up a sequence is to be just in time. You synchronize the sequence to speed up its end result. Just in time synchronizing sequences. Now, the final one, since we have 2 minutes left, and perhaps 1 minute for questions. Do you control the environment, or is the environment controlling you? Have a look. We ask people, do you control the environment? Answer A. Or B, I don't have enough control over the direction my life is taken. Have a look. Answer A, I am in control. Answer B. So you see that internally controlled people are more at the top, externally controlled people are at the bottom. What does this mean for the coachee? Have a look at different scores where the big difference, because this is the only dimension where males and females constantly, females are more externally controlled, males are more internally controlled, except one country, the Netherlands, where females are more internally controlled and males are more externally.
Oh, okay. We lost Fons, but I think Fons was at the end of his session. So if he comes back, that's great. Otherwise, thanks, Carol. Thanks, Fons. We will share the PowerPoint as well as the other references that he has given in the forum. Nishmita will post the forum as well as the YouTube links. And Nishmita, would you like to close now, please?
Yes. So I've already put up the presentation on SlideShare, and I've added the link to the forum in the description. I'm just pasting that here. So please continue the conversation and share your valuable insights there. Again, I'd like to inform you that we've started this new initiative of peer coaching. So all of you who are training to become a coach or are coaches already, please sign up for our peer coaching. The next one will be on Monday, 8:30 p.m. in India and 10 a.m. in the US, 10 a.m. CST. So again, I'm putting the link of that as well. And of course, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel in order to keep yourself posted with webinar recordings and just access all of our resources. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you again on Monday.
Thanks, Nishita. Thanks, Carol. Thank you very, very much. And I feel sad that Fons had to get cut off, but I'll get in touch with him and thank him for all the wonderful stuff that he shared with us. Thank you all. Bye. Take care.
Thank you.
Oh, Fons, we are just closing, so we are saying bye to you. Thanks for coming back.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. So yeah, because it's already just past this thing. I'm quite Indian. I'm very flexible, but the audience is very global. So we'd like to be just in time, if you don't mind. Okay. So with all the culture. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Great pleasure having you. Wonderful. We'll be in touch. I'll be in touch with you on the other stuff. And do send me all the stuff. Yeah.
It looks like it was a knife that cut it exactly at 4:30. But I don't know what happened. I just lost connection. But we're back, and we just finished the last slide. So yeah. May I thank you in particular also, Carol. I hope it came across clearly. But it was a pleasure on my side.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. Such a pleasure. Thank you.
Same here. And I'm happy we could finish the model exactly on time.
Brilliant, Fons.
Yeah.
And thanks a lot. Just share with us some of the references that you had and any other stuff. We'll have it all posted on. Already your PowerPoint has been posted on the forum. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you all for all the great help. And I'll immediately send you some interesting articles.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you again.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.